So what you see in front of you are these are some of the automations that we have been internally and have been shared, so customers can leverage that. For example, Cisco iOS upgrade. Whether it's customer A or B, if they have a Cisco device, the upgrade procedure is the same, right? So what we have done is the 70%, which is the actual impact to that device during the upgrade, we have actually automated that and open sourced it. But what that allows you to do is now the customers have the ability to embed some of their technologies within their ecosystem, like a ticketing system or a messaging system, within that automation and go 100%, right? So instead of starting at 0%, we're providing you that 70% head start. In addition to some of these pre-built automations, we also have adapters here. So there's close to 60 plus adapters, and these are integrations that you can leverage in order to connect to your end system and make those as part of your horizontal automation strategy, right? So I can keep scrolling, and we'll definitely take a look at this as part of this demo later on. So what I'm going to do as part of this demonstration is I'm going to download this artifact, which is a Cisco iOS upgrade artifact, and execute it on a virtual device right now, right? So I'm starting from scratch. I don't have any workflows available for the Cisco iOS upgrade, so I'm just going to click on install, click OK. So what it's doing, right, it's actually installing all the required components. In this case, we're going to have those command templates that do pre-checks and post-checks. We're going to have workflows that actually upgrade the device, and we're also going to have something called a service catalog item, which provides a self-service portal capability to your customers who can request it. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to quickly dive into the Automation Studio, and you'll notice these are all the workflows that automatically a customer would have in their environment when they install that pre-built automation, right? So this is a main flow, and then you have a specific modular flow to upgrade that device via Ansible, or if this is a connection health check to make sure once the device gets reloaded, this is a modular piece that you can actually run as part of your automation to make sure the device is up and running before you run the post checks, right? So these are all the components that you get out of box immediately. The next thing we're going to do is quickly go into the service catalog folder and associate a form, like a request form. So this is another entry that you actually get. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to associate a form. So this is a way for me to take input from your end user that you're exposing this self-service concept to, right? So let's scroll down. We're going to choose this form. I'm going to go ahead and update. So now if I go back to application and go to service catalog, sorry, so before I go into the service catalog, I quickly wanted to point out that when you host a service catalog item using this application, you have the ability to now choose which groups can interact with that or request that service, right? So this becomes very powerful because if you're trying to host a set of services that only apply to your cloud customers, you can now create an automation that only cloud customers can execute, right? So this becomes important, and this is a reusable sense. You can actually execute and request these automations to be kicked off from an external source or from within our service catalog, which I'm going to go next to. So if I go into the service catalog, you'll notice there's an action item here for the device upgrade. So when I click on it, it shows you a form. This form was actually created using the form builder that I was showing you earlier. So we're going to do it on for ATL3, and then we'll choose for the RP boot, right? That's one of the releases that are available on the device. So I'm going to kick this off. So what this has done is a customer has requested iOS upgrade on a device, a network device, and we're going to active jobs, and let's take a look at what's happening within the automation itself, right? So I'm going to quickly go into the visualize screen to kind of show you what the layout of this automation is. So right now it's executing this step within the flow, which is to verify the current state of the device, right? So when I double click on it, you'll notice that, we audit all the information, what the incoming parameters are. So in this case, we're checking to make sure that this release actually exists on the device. And if it doesn't, you have the potential to now kick off another automation that would go and pull that release from an SFTP or an FTP server onto the device programmatically, right? So we want to go to the route of zero-touch automation, and when it comes to software upgrades, so that's why we're providing these little modular flows that you can leverage out of box. So the next thing it's running is executing is the pre-checks on the device, right? So we always want to make sure that we're 100% sure that the device is in the correct state and it has all the interfaces and we capture all the information that we need to before we perform the upgrade. So this is an automated task, and an operation engineer had defined a command template, which actually gets executed here, and you'll be able to see the results. The blue boxes are the manual intervention task, and you'll see a lot of those within this flow. And the reason for that is when most of our customers get started with automation, it's still hard for them to, trust it at first. And that's why they want to make sure that, hey, when someone runs a pre-check or if I make a change into the network, I actually want to see before I approve, right? So that's where it starts, and that's why you see a lot of manual intervention step where someone can actually see the results coming back from the device. But over time, as they perform these automation on thousands of devices, basically the data set that they actually take a look at is the same, right? Almost the same. So what they do is start eliminating the blue boxes, and you'll see the green, which is the automated boxes all the way through, other than when something drastic happens, you have to build in fallouts, right? So majority of the folks just starting out with automation focus on the positive. So you might write a script to do an upgrade, but if the script fails, you have to go check logs, etc. Right? But our automation platform allows you to actually build in. So this pre-built automation comes with a lot of best practices that we have actually learned from working with a lot of different customers, and we have actually embedded that within these flows, right? So you'll realize that if something fails, it'll give you a pre-check error and a decision task, and then allow you to retry those pre-checks in the meantime, right? It's important because you don't want to waste the entire maintenance window because your pre-checks fail, right? Because it's automated, you have the ability to go faster and retry again and again until it's either successful or you want to escalate it because you failed 5 times during the upgrade process, right? So now let's take a look at what the pre-checks results are. So in this case, the operation engineer had defined close to 7 commands to do show version. And this was one of the rules that was set. So I can take a look at the response here. And the reason why it was in past state is you'll notice it actually matched this config, right? So you can start defining these rule sets and make sure that, hey, I'm going to programmatically check all my responses and based on my rule sets and then move forward to the next step. So I'm going to go ahead and click success, and then we're going to face another manual task that will tell us, hey, what if your pre-check failed? Do you want to ignore it or do you want to repeat the pre-check? So this is a great part, right? Because if someone went in the background and made a out-of-bound change and they fixed it again, you have the ability to repeat the pre-checks and go forward with the flow. In this case, we're going to go ahead and ignore it, and let's move forward to the actual upgrade of the device, right? So I'll go ahead and say upgrade here, and I will switch back to the visualize view. So in the visualize view, what it's actually doing is it's actually getting the boot flash, and what you'll notice is there's an eval step here, right? So as part of best practices, your device could be managed by several different technologies. In this case, that same device is managed by, that device is actually managed by Ansible, but you could have the next device that you're trying to upgrade potentially managed by another, service orchestrator. So based on this evaluation that you built into your flow, it actually took this route, and we have a sub workflow. So if I double click on it, you notice this is a modular flow that we had created to perform an upgrade using Ansible, right? So these are all the tasks that we have embedded within the flow. It'll perform a backup of the running config, it'll wipe the boot statements, and it will set the boot statement and ultimately reload, right? So what it's doing now is it has successfully reloaded the device. So if I, double click on it, you will take a look at what the incoming parameters are and what the outgoing, right? So it's successfully reloaded, and now we're waiting for the virtual router to actually come back. So we have a secondary flow here that performs a test connection action, which it will ping a device, right? It will ping a device, and once the device is up and running, it will make sure the ping results are successful 5 times before we move forward and say, yes, the device is completely up. Because sometimes you might get false signal and say, yes, the device is up, and it goes back down again. So we actually had built in some robustness flow where it will keep retrying a configurable amount of time. So right now I've set it to 5 times, but you could set it to 20 or 30, right? So this is the beauty about the platform is you can define your own parameters. It's model and data driven, so that will suit the needs of your organization and the way that you actually upgrade devices within your environment, right? So this process, because it's an actual device, takes close to 2 to 3 minutes. But while it's doing this in the background, what I would like to show is our dev site. I would encourage everyone to go to our dev site and take a look at the open source repositories. And as Rich mentioned earlier, right, our goal is to provide as many use cases out there that will give you the on-ramp and the confidence to get started with automation day one, right? We don't want you to be scared to start from, ground zero and say, how do I get started? This seems hard, etc. So we're putting a lot of effort into providing the pre-built automation, which are use cases. So you'll notice there's a lot more here. So when they get certified and published, you'll be able to utilize an application within our platform to easily install it, just like I did for the Cisco iOS upgrade, right? So you'll see a lot more in the coming months. So in addition to the pre-built automations, if I go back to the open source page again, you'll notice there's adapters, right? Adapters are the way that we actually integrate with all the technologies within your ecosystem, right? So these are categorized by SD-WAN, security, etc. And we have another page on our dev site that will actually give you a list. In addition to providing close to 65 open source adapters, we have also open sourced the actual builder, which we mentioned earlier. So if you don't see a technology on this list, you will be able to build it yourself, given that it has open API spec. You basically drop that in the panel and walk through a few steps, and within 5 minutes you'll have that integration ready to go. And this is very powerful because a lot of times customers are investing in new technologies. They already have old technologies, but they're swivel chairing between because there is no way to bridge the two. So Itential provides an easy way for you to start bridging all of these technologies together in order to provide that end-to-end automation goal that everyone is looking for, right? That's where the real ROI is. The last thing that I'm going to cover with respect to open source is this also helps out the DevOps, the group, right? So the CI/CD pipelines and technology that we use internally, which is Argo, we have open sourced that as well. So all the applications that go through the rigorous amount of unit testing and linting and all the great stuff that's embedded in here, you will be able to leverage. So your DevOps team will be able to leverage this outside of using the Itential automation platform to make sure that the applications that you're rolling out are thoroughly tested, as well as meet your criteria of quality, right? So I just quickly wanted to highlight a few pieces, but definitely would encourage folks to go through our dev site as well as the open source page. So let's go back to the flow and see where we are. So currently what it's doing is it's actually testing connection. It will perform this particular loop 5 times. And once it's complete, it will move to the next step. So it looks like, the ping test passed, this is prime. So now we're going to go back to the main flow and see that it's actually running the post checks. Another thing you'll notice is when the automation gets executed, if it never took this particular path, you'll see the boxes that are grayed out. So at least it will give you a visual way of assessing, did it take a success or a failure path. So I'm going to quickly go back to our main job. It's currently running post checks on the device to see if all the interfaces were up or if the version was changed successfully, etc. And we'll be able to take a look at the results shortly after the post checks are completed. And there you go. So I'm going to take a look at the results here. So you'll notice, nothing was affected. And usually when engineers perform upgrade, they have a pre, they have a post, they're going to do a diff compare to make sure that everything is okay. But in this case, you can programmatically set these rules so you don't have to, right? So the whole goal is to kind of take the mundane tasks away and allow you to kind of focus on the robustness of the entire process versus, hey, I ran this command and I want to take a look at the results of it separately. So I'm going to quickly scroll through this. Because this was existing prior, it's not, as an engineer for me, okay, well, NTP is disabled. It was not a big deal because it was disabled prior to the upgrade. So I'm going to move forward and say success. And shortly, we'll take a look at what the actual diff looks like on the device. I'll say ignore, because I'm okay with the post checks. And this is the diff, right? So this actually tells you what actually happened. So I'm going to quickly take minimal. And you'll notice that previously the device was on this particular boot flash, and now we set it to this one, right? So this is a quick way of someone to verify. But again, you know, as they start becoming more advanced into their automation stages, they would programmatically check for these differences and approve or roll back the actual upgrade. So I'm going to go ahead and proceed on this step. And my upgrade is complete. So that was a, short little demonstration of how, teams within organization can quickly ramp up on their automation journey. And Itential is very dedicated to kind of provide these on-ramps day in, day out. So please look out for all the things that are coming out in our open source.